to revenge with Lyra.
Well, wifey, from now on you'll eat from your own groceries. I'm sick of you taking my money, my husband declared, voice loud enough to rattle the spice jars. He stood in the doorway, one hand on his hip, the other still carrying the last of the grocery bags like a trophy. His grin was the kind that sounded pleased with himself even when it had no reason to be. I looked at the countertop, at the receipt he shoved toward me, at the little total circled in permanent condescension. The house smelled like garlic and cheap cologne, the clock over the stove ticking louder than it should. People make declarations when they think they're safe, I thought, when confidence stands on the brittle legs of someone else's inertia. My name is Sophie Hale. I'm 33. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. I smiled the way you smile when you're cataloging evidence. Okay, I said, calm as a hell breath. Fine. He blinked, triumphant. Good. Consider it fair. He didn't see the small list taped underneath the spice rack, the one I'd written 2 nights ago after another month of his excuses and last-minute money requests. It read, in neat, unassuming letters, groceries, his name off account, emergency fund, kitchen rules. I tore the list in half and slid each piece into 2 different drawers like a magician hiding cards. We're having 20 relatives for your birthday? He asked later, voice sugary. Your mom will love how generous I am. He beamed, pleased he could throw an event and force applause for the people who'd never notice me unless there was food involved. He never considered that generosity can be performative, an audience piece dressed as kindness. When the first car pulled into our driveway 3 days later, the house smelled the way it always had on holidays: cinnamon, roasted peppers, and the quiet tension of expectations. Plates gleamed in the oven. The table folded out like stage scenery. My husband hovered, preening, ready for compliments. They stepped into the kitchen, laughing, hands full of wine and gossip, and then they stopped. The room went small and sharp. Their eyes slid over the island, the place cards, the buffet, but lingered on the note propped like a placard where the roast should be. The note read, all food provided by guests. Kitchen access, none. Please check coats and wallets at the door. Silence settled like flour on the countertops, soft, white, impossible to ignore. My husband froze first. His face flickered between confusion and disbelief, as if he was waiting for a punchline that never came. The relatives, his brothers, cousins, that aunt who never left without leftovers, looked around for the usual smell of dinner, but the only scent in the air was freshly brewed coffee and quiet defiance. What is this? He demanded, lifting the note like it was written in a foreign language. Exactly what it says, I replied, folding napkins with deliberate calm. Everyone brings their own food. Remember? Separate groceries. A few guests tried to laugh it off. You're kidding, right? His mother asked, clutching her pearls like the family's reputation depended on my answer. I smiled sweetly. Not at all. Since we have separate budgets now, I didn't want to burden my husband with feeding 20 people from his groceries. The words landed like cold water. His cousins shuffled, pretending to check their phones. One of them whispered, damn, under his breath. My husband's voice cracked. You're embarrassing me in front of my family. I met his eyes. You embarrassed me the moment you called me a burden in my own kitchen. He sputtered, his hands gripping the countertop as if he could control the situation by holding on tighter. You can't just— I can, I said softly, and I did. I gestured toward the empty table. Feel free to stay. I made coffee. That's from my groceries. For a moment, no one moved. Then, like a slow collapse of politeness, people began backing away. Someone coughed. Someone muttered an excuse. The door opened and closed, one relative after another filing out. By the time silence returned, only he and I stood there, me with a calm pulse, him with a face red as the pot left on the stove. You've lost your mind, he hissed. No, I said, finally sitting down. I just stopped losing everything else. He paced the kitchen, breathing heavy, the way he did when control slipped through his hands. You humiliated me, he said finally, slamming his palm against the counter. You made me look like some cheap fool. I tilted my head. You didn't need my help with that. He froze, eyes narrowing. You think you're clever? No, I said quietly. I think I'm done being convenient. He started collecting his phone, keys, and wallet, angry motions that filled the air like static. You better fix this before they start talking. I leaned against the counter, arms folded. Let them. Maybe they'll finally see what I've been living with. He stopped, stunned that I didn't flinch, didn't beg, didn't apologize. For years, every argument ended with me smoothing things over, cooking his favorite dinner, pretending peace was worth silence. Not this time. I walked to the refrigerator, opened the door, and showed him 2 shelves, his and mine. See, I said, pointing to the labeled stickers. Yours, beer, bacon, processed snacks. Mine, vegetables, yogurt, sanity. He blinked, unsure if I was joking. I wasn't. When you said separate groceries, I continued. I thought you meant it. Turns out, I was the only one who listened. He opened his mouth, then shut it, maybe realizing he'd run out of script. The confidence that once made him magnetic now made him small. Go ahead, I said softly. Tell everyone I stopped cooking for you. Tell them why. He stormed out, the front door slamming so hard a photo frame rattled off the wall. I picked it up. It was from our wedding. We were both smiling, but even then, I looked tired in the eyes. That night, I cooked a small dinner for one. My table never felt so peaceful. The next morning, the phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls from his mother, text messages from his cousins, and one especially dramatic voicemail from his sister. How could you do this to him on his birthday? I sat at the table eating oatmeal with blueberries, my groceries, and let the notifications pile up. Every ring was proof that my quiet had finally become louder than their noise. When he finally came home that afternoon, the air was thick with accusation. You've turned everyone against me, he said. No, I said, calmly rinsing my bowl. You did that the moment you treated your wife like an employee you could underpay.
He scoffed.
Oh, don't start your feminist nonsense.
This isn't about that.
You're right, I said, turning off the tap. It's about respect. The one thing you can't buy, though you've tried. He paced the kitchen again, just like the night before, his voice rising with every step. Do you know what people are saying? They think I'm broke. They think you control me. I leaned on the counter, meeting his eyes. If you care half as much about the truth as you do about your image, we wouldn't be here. He clenched his jaw, grabbed his jacket, and muttered, Fine. You want separate lives? You've got it. And then he left again, tires screeching down the driveway. For a long moment, I stood in the doorway, the silence settling over the house like dust. Then I smiled, small, real. In the afternoon, I transferred the last of my savings into a new account under my name only. That night, I changed the locks. The next morning, a moving truck pulled into the driveway, his things neatly boxed, labeled, and waiting by the porch. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's organized. By evening, the house looked lighter. His clutter was gone, the constant trail of socks and unpaid bills erased from sight. The air even smelled different, citrus cleaner and freedom. I sat on the couch with a mug of tea, scrolling through job listings for a second income stream, just because I could. For the first time in years, every decision was mine. My phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. The text read, You can't just kick me out. My name's on the lease. I took a slow sip, typed back. Correction it was. I paid the rent this month. The landlord's already updated it. 3 dots blinked for a while, then stopped. Silence. A knock came around 8. I didn't move until it repeated, sharper. I opened the door halfway. He stood there, eyes glassy, carrying a grocery bag like a peace offering. Inside were beer cans and instant noodles. I came to talk, he said, trying to soften his tone. You've made your point. I didn't make a point, I said, keeping the door steady between us. I made a choice.
He sighed.
You really think you can do this on your own? I already am. His laugh was small and mean. Let's see how long before you come crawling back. I smiled. If that happens, I'll bring my own groceries. He stared at me, realizing the conversation wasn't going to end in surrender. Finally, he dropped the bag by his feet and left without another word. The next morning, I left for work early, stopped at a cafe, and ordered breakfast for one. Avocado toast, fresh coffee, peace. The barista smiled. You celebrating something? Yeah, I said. My appetite came back. And this time, I wasn't feeding anyone's ego but my own. Weeks passed, and the silence became comfortable. I didn't realize how much energy it took to live with someone who filled every quiet space with criticism. Now, mornings began with coffee and a podcast, not a list of my supposed flaws. At work, my colleagues noticed. You look different, my friend Dana said during lunch. Like you slept. I did. I laughed. For the first time in years. I focused on my projects, finished early, and even started baking again, something I'd stopped because he'd mocked it as a waste of ingredients. My small apartment smelled like vanilla and cinnamon, peace rising like warm bread. Then one afternoon, an envelope arrived, thick, creased, familiar handwriting on the front. His. I didn't open it right away. It sat on my counter for hours before curiosity won. Inside was a single note. We were good once. Let's fix it. I miss us. There was no apology. No mention of the slap, the humiliation, or the public scene that started all this. Just nostalgia, the cheapest form of manipulation. I tore the letter in half, dropped it into the trash, and smiled when I saw my groceries in the fridge. Everything fresh, everything mine. Later that night, I drafted an email to my landlord, officially requesting to remove his name from the old lease and replace it with mine. I attached proof of income, deposit slips, and a short note. Tenant has relocated permanently. Before bed, I sat on the balcony with my tea and whispered into the night. This is what love should have felt like. Quiet, clean mine. No begging. No bargaining. Just being. And when I finally turned out the light, the house didn't feel empty. It finally felt owned. A month later, I came home to a letter taped to my door, not from him this time, but from his mother. Her words bled guilt between every line. He's struggling, Rachel. He says you turned everyone against him. You were always the smart one. Can't you help? I read it once, folded it carefully, and slid it beneath a stack of unopened bills that weren't mine anymore. Guilt was their favorite currency, and I'd stopped trading in it. That evening, Dana came over with wine. We cooked pasta, opened all the windows, and laughed so hard we scared the cat. Midway through dinner, she leaned across the table. So, she grinned, you really done with him? I smiled, twirling my fork. You know how people say they hit rock bottom? I found mine and built a kitchen on top of it. She raised her glass. To separate groceries. We clinked glasses, and it felt like sealing a pact with myself. The next morning, I received an email from a publishing platform where I'd submitted an article anonymously. Congratulations, your piece, The Grocery Line Divorce, has been accepted for publication. I reread the title and laughed. My story, our ridiculous fight, had become something useful. Healing disguised as humor. The article went live that weekend and spread fast. Comments poured in from women who'd lived the same pattern in different kitchens. You wrote my marriage, one said. I'm buying my own groceries tomorrow, wrote another. Reading their words, I realized revenge had quietly turned into something softer, stronger, empowerment. I didn't need to ruin him. I just needed to rebuild myself loud enough for others to find the exit too. The article exploded far beyond what I expected. Overnight, it was shared on forums, blogs, even a morning talk show segment titled, Women Reclaiming Their Kitchens. My inbox flooded with messages from strangers, some thanking me, others asking how to start over after years of being financially and emotionally erased. And then, inevitably, came one from him. No greeting, no apology, just a sentence. I didn't know you'd turn our private life into a public joke. I read it twice, then typed back. It's not a joke. It's a blueprint. And hit send. Weeks later, I stood in my newly painted kitchen, the same room where it all began. The walls were soft sage now, not beige like before. I'd replaced the dining table, The old one had too many ghosts and stocked the shelves with things I liked. Spices he used to mock. Tea blends he said were pretentious. My first royalty payment arrived that afternoon, small but symbolic. I transferred half into savings, half into a new fund I created online. The Shared Shelf Project, microgrants for women leaving controlling households. It felt poetic, turning a fight over groceries into fuel for freedom. That evening, Dana dropped by with flowers and a grin. "You made the news again," she said, holding up her phone. The anchor read, "From domestic disrespect to digital empowerment. One woman's viral story." I laughed. Guess separate groceries fed more than one person. After she left, I poured myself a glass of wine, set it beside my dinner, a simple bowl of pasta, no audience, no performance, and looked around my quiet, sunlit kitchen. For years, I thought strength meant enduring. Now I knew it meant ending. I took one last